One of the hardest things to accept in life is this. Most betrayal does not come out of nowhere. It feels sudden when it happens. It feels shocking when the truth lands. It feels like the floor dropped out from under you. But if you look back carefully, really carefully, there were usually signs, small ones, quiet ones, odd little shifts in tone, a strange energy you couldn't explain, support that started feeling less sincere, questions that sounded caring but felt a little too interested, smiles that were there, but something underneath them wasn't. And that's what makes betrayal so disturbing. Because a lot of the time, the person doesn't stab you in the dark. They stand near you in the light first. They laugh with you. They check on you. They talk like they support you. They may even help you in small ways. But inwardly, something else is happening. Something insecure. Something resentful. Something split. And that split is where betrayal begins. So let me ask you early on, what was the first sign someone was about to betray you, but you only understood it later? Was it distance, strange questions, fake support, a shift in their tone, a weird competitiveness? Drop that in the comments, because I think a lot of people have lived through betrayal, but the part they really need to process is what came before it. Because once you start seeing the patterns, a lot of things begin to make sense. And this is where the Carl Jung angle gets interesting. Jung understood that people are not just made of the version of themselves they show you. They are also made of what they hide, their envy, their shame, their inferiority, their shadow, their hunger to be seen as good, and sometimes their resentment toward the very people they admire. That's why insecure people can be especially confusing, because insecurity often wears a mask. It doesn't walk into your life saying, "Hello, I'm deeply threatened by you," and may later act funny. No, it usually enters wearing politeness, admiration, agreement, warmth, neediness, support. But over time, the shadow leaks. And if you know what to watch for, you can often see betrayal forming long before the actual moment arrives. So in this video, I want to talk about what insecure people do right before they betray you. Not in a paranoid way, not in a trust nobody ever again and go live in the mountains kind of way. Just in a real way, a grounded way. A way that helps you become more discerning without becoming cold. Because some people don't betray you because you were weak. They betray you because your presence stirred up something in them they didn't know how to handle honestly. Let's go straight into it. 1. Right before they betray you, they start studying you more closely than before. This is one of the strangest signs, and people often miss it because it doesn't look hostile at first. In fact, it can look like attention, interest, concern, support, curiosity, but the energy underneath it changes. An insecure person who is moving toward betrayal often starts observing you more carefully. They want details, not because they suddenly care more, because they're unconsciously gathering emotional material. They ask more questions about your plans, your relationships, your fears, your weak spots, your disappointments, your blind spots, your finances, your next move, your confidence, your support system, and sometimes the questions sound innocent enough that you answer them without thinking, but later you realize something chilling. They weren't just listening, they were mapping your vulnerabilities, mapping your expectations, mapping where you feel strong and where you feel exposed, mapping what matters to you enough to hurt. That's why insecure betrayal often has this eerie quality to it. When it finally happens, it hits in a very specific place, a place they could only have found because they had been quietly paying attention. Jung would say that the shadow is rarely random. It moves with intention when threatened, and insecure people feel threatened in subtle ways, not always because you harmed them, Sometimes because your confidence, growth, peace, talent, or self-respect activates their inferiority. So instead of confronting their feelings honestly, they begin compensating unconsciously. One form of compensation is information gathering. Now, to be clear, not everyone who asks questions is dangerous. Some people are genuinely interested, but you can feel the difference if you pay attention. Genuine interest feels warm, it feels relaxed, it feels mutual, but insecure curiosity can feel sharp, slightly intrusive, slightly investigative. Like they're leaning into your life not to understand you, but to position themselves around you. And here's the part that surprises people. Sometimes betrayal begins with fascination. They are drawn to you, drawn to your progress, drawn to your strength, drawn to the very qualities they later turn against. Because insecure people often want proximity to what they secretly envy. That's why the first stage can look like closeness, not distance. Closeness. But it's a closeness with tension in it, not the kind that nourishes, the kind that studies. So if someone starts feeling unusually interested in the exact parts of your life that could later be used against you, pay attention. Not panic, just pay attention. Because right before betrayal, insecure people often become very curious about what would hurt you. 2. Right before they betray you, their support starts feeling slightly off. This one is subtle, and because it's subtle, people often override their own intuition. They tell themselves, no, maybe I'm overthinking. No, they're probably just tired. No, they still support me. But something has shifted. The words may still sound supportive, but the energy behind them no longer lands the same. They congratulate you, but it feels thin. They say they're happy for you, but their face doesn't match. They encourage you, but something in the tone feels heavy. They ask about your progress, but the question feels loaded. You start sharing good news, and instead of warmth, you feel static. And this is where insecure people become especially revealing, because support is easy when your growth is hypothetical, when your win is small, when your light is still dim enough not to challenge their self-image. But when your progress starts becoming real, when people notice you, when your life shifts, when your confidence deepens, support becomes harder for insecure people to fake cleanly. That's when the distortion enters. They may still say the right thing, but now it sounds like one of these, "That's nice, just don't burn out." Wow, people are really into that these days. "I'm proud of you. I just hope this doesn't change you." That's great, but stay humble. "You're doing a lot lately." Now on paper none of that sounds criminal, but emotionally it's a very specific kind of support. Support with a leash attached. Support with a warning hidden inside it. Support that wants your growth to remain non-threatening. Jung talked about the tension between the persona and the shadow. The persona says, "I'm supportive, I'm a good friend, I'm happy for you." The shadow says, "Your progress is making me uncomfortable, and I don't like what it stirs up in me." So what comes out is a mixed signal, a sentence that looks kind, but leaves a sting behind. That's why you should listen, not just to what people say, but to the emotional residue you feel after they say it. Do you feel expanded or slightly reduced? Do you feel seen or subtly managed? Because insecure people often don't withdraw support all at once. They contaminate it first. And that contamination is usually one of the earliest signs that betrayal is forming. Not always dramatic betrayal. Sometimes it's quieter, talking behind your back, undermining your credibility, sharing your private information, secretly resenting your progress, distancing while pretending nothing changed. But before they betray you outwardly, support usually becomes emotionally unstable inwardly. That's the sign. 3. Right before they betray you, they start competing with you. in weird, quiet ways. Now this one catches a lot of people off guard, because not all competition is obvious. Insecure people often compete sideways. They don't come out and say, "I'm threatened by you." That would be too honest. Instead, the competition leaks out in strange little behaviors. You share an achievement, and they immediately bring up theirs. You open up about a challenge, and somehow the conversation becomes about how they've had it harder. You mention progress, and they subtly downgrade it. You step into confidence, and they suddenly become more performative around you. It's like every interaction starts carrying this odd undercurrent of comparison. And if you notice it, you might feel almost guilty for noticing it, because it can sound petty to even say it out loud. But your nervous system often picks it up before your mind does. Something no longer feels mutual. It feels measured by who seems more successful, more admired, more needed, more insightful, more attractive, more emotionally strong, more spiritually evolved. And yes, some people will compete with you using spirituality, healing language, and fake humility, which is honestly one of the more exhausting personality genres. They'll act like they're above competition, while quietly turning every interaction into a scoreboard. That's because insecure people often cannot stay relaxed around someone they feel inferior to. They need a way to restore internal balance. One way they do that is by turning connection into comparison. Now, why does this matter before betrayal? Because betrayal often grows where comparison has already poisoned intimacy. Once someone starts seeing you not as a friend, partner, ally, or trusted person, but as a psychological rival, the relationship changes. Now your wins feel costly to them. Your peace feels provocative. Your growth feels annoying. Your joy feels like accidental disrespect. And once someone experiences your life that way, betrayal becomes easier. Why? Because competition reduces empathy. It's harder to protect someone you're quietly trying to beat. Jung would likely say that what is not integrated becomes projected outward. If someone has not faced their own feelings of inferiority, envy, inadequacy, or failure, they don't process those feelings consciously. They act them out relationally. That's when insecure competition begins to morph into subtle sabotage. And sabotage is often betrayal wearing casual clothes. So if someone around you cannot celebrate without comparing, cannot connect without measuring, and cannot hear your growth without repositioning themselves, be careful, because betrayal often begins as silent competition that was never admitted. 4. Right before they betray you, they become more inconsistent than usual. This one matters more than people realize, because inconsistency is often treated as a personality quirk. They're just like that. They're moody. They go through phases. They've got a lot going on. And sure, sometimes that's true. But when insecurity is moving toward betrayal, inconsistency often takes on a specific pattern. The person becomes warmer when they need access, cooler when they feel threatened, closer when they want information, distant when your energy feels too strong, supportive in private, odd in public, attentive one day, dismissive the next. In other words, their behavior stops being rooted in care and starts being rooted in internal turbulence. And that turbulence matters, because inconsistency is not always random. Sometimes it reflects a hidden emotional war inside the person. Part of them likes you, part of them resents you, part of them admires you, part of them feels small around you, part of them wants closeness, part of them wants distance. That split creates unstable behavior. And unstable behavior is often the emotional atmosphere right before betrayal. Why? Because betrayal rarely comes from someone who feels internally settled toward you. It usually comes from someone who is divided. Divided between attachment and envy. Divided between affection and inferiority. divided between wanting your approval and wanting to punish you for how you make them feel. That's why the inconsistency can feel so crazy-making. One moment they are kind, the next moment cold, then kind again, then subtly undermining, then back to normal. And because the good moments still exist, you keep giving the benefit of the doubt. You keep telling yourself the version you like is the real version. But sometimes both versions are real. That's the uncomfortable truth. The warm version is real, and the resentful version is also real. That is what makes insecure people so hard to read before betrayal. They are not always pretending. Sometimes they genuinely do care, but care mixed with resentment becomes unstable, and unstable attachment becomes dangerous. Jung understood this deeply. People are not one-piece beings. They are often split between the self they know and the self they repress. If the shadow gets strong enough, it eventually acts. And when it acts, people around them say, "This came out of nowhere." But it didn't. The inconsistency was the warning. 5. Right before they betray you, they start planting tiny seeds of distance or doubt. This one is so easy to miss, because it doesn't look like betrayal yet. It looks like little comments, tiny shifts, small changes in atmosphere. Maybe they start misunderstanding you more often. Maybe they stop giving you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they act a little more skeptical, a little more guarded, a little less open. Or maybe they start saying things that create micro-distance. I don't know. You've been different lately. You don't really tell me everything anymore. Sometimes I don't know where I stand with you. You've changed. You think differently now. Now, sometimes those statements are honest attempts at repair, but other times, insecure people use them to prepare the ground psychologically. Why would they do that? Because betrayal often feels easier when the betrayer has already started rewriting the emotional story. They need friction. They need justification. They need a narrative that makes their coming behavior feel more acceptable. So before they betray you, they begin introducing subtle distance. Not enough to fully expose what they're doing. Just enough to shift the emotional frame. Now, if they talk behind your back, it won't feel as shocking to them. If they pull away, they can tell themselves the connection was already off. If they cross a line, they can blame the drift. If they expose something private, they can rationalize it with, "Well, we weren't really the same anymore." This is one of the shadow's favorite moves. Prepare the lie emotionally before acting it out behaviorally. And because insecure people are often allergic to direct confrontation, they don't say, "I feel inferior to you. I feel replaced. I feel threatened. I feel resentful." No. They create atmosphere instead, a fog, a strange little cloud over the connection. And if you're not paying attention, you may think you're just imagining it. You're not always imagining it. Sometimes betrayal begins with the creation of emotional distance that gives the betrayer permission to later act out what they already feel. That's why these small comments matter. They may not be the betrayal, but they can be the runway. 6. Right before they betray you, they start seeking validation from other people about you. This one is important because betrayal often requires an audience or at least emotional backup. Insecure people rarely like betraying from a place of full personal responsibility. That would require too much honesty. So what do they do instead? They begin consulting the room, not always literally, sometimes quietly. They test how others see you. They hint at things. They float concerns. They make casual remarks. They subtly gather agreement. They may say things like, "I don't know. Have you noticed they've been different? Maybe it's just me, but something feels off. I'm happy for them, but do you think they've changed? They've been acting strange lately." Now this may sound harmless, But what's happening psychologically is not harmless. They are seeking emotional permission, permission to feel what they feel, permission to resent, permission to distance, permission to act out, because once other people nod, even slightly, their inner conflict gets lighter. Now they don't feel like the problem. Now they feel confirmed. And confirmed resentment is much more dangerous than private resentment. Why? Because once insecure people feel socially backed, the betrayal becomes easier to justify. Now gossip feels like truth-sharing. Now disloyalty feels like discernment. Now exposing you feels like people should know. Now undermining you feels like protecting others. This is how insecure betrayal becomes moralized. And moralized betrayal is especially dangerous because the person no longer sees themselves as acting from shadow. They see themselves as reasonable. Jung warned about this kind of unconsciousness. The less aware people are of their own shadow, the more likely they are to act it out while feeling righteous. That's why some of the people who betray you the hardest are not the openly cruel ones. They are the inwardly conflicted ones who found a story that made their cruelty feel justified. So if someone starts subtly checking with others about you, reframing your actions, or trying to create soft consensus around a negative shift, watch that carefully. Because very often betrayal wants witnesses before it wants action. 7. Right before they betray you, they stop seeing you clearly and start relating to a story about you. This is the deepest sign of all, and maybe the most painful. Before insecure people betray you, they often stop relating to who you actually are. Instead, they begin relating to a version of you created by their insecurity. In that story, you become too proud, too distant, too lucky, too self-focused, too different, too much, too hard to access, too successful, too unaffected, too aware, too powerful for their comfort. And once that story takes over, the real you becomes less relevant. Now they are not responding to your heart. They are responding to their projection. This is classic Jung. When people cannot face what is happening inside them, they often project it outward. Their envy becomes your arrogance. Their inferiority becomes your change. Their shame becomes your coldness. Their insecurity becomes your attitude. And once the projection sets in, betrayal becomes easier because they are no longer betraying you in their mind. They are betraying the character they created. That's why betrayal can sometimes feel so surreal. You think, how could they do this? That's not even who I am. Exactly. But the betrayal wasn't built against who you are. It was built against what they needed you to be, so they could justify what they were about to do. This is why insecure people often betray kind people and still act wounded. Why they betray loyal people and still talk like victims. Why they betray honest people and still feel misunderstood. Because psychologically, they've already edited reality, and once reality has been edited enough, betrayal feels emotionally logical to them. That is the darkest part. Not that they turned against you, but that they had to missee you first. They had to stop seeing your humanity clearly, stop seeing your intentions clearly, stop seeing the history clearly. They had to replace truth with emotional convenience. And once that happens, the act of betrayal is just the final behavior in a much older inner process. So, if we pull all of this together, what do insecure people do right before they betray you? They study you more closely. They support you in ways that start feeling slightly off. They compete with you in quiet, sideways ways. They become inconsistent. They plant little seeds of distance and doubt. They seek validation from other people about you. And finally, they stop seeing you clearly and start relating to a story shaped by their insecurity. And if that feels heavy, it's because betrayal is heavy. But this conversation is not here to make you paranoid. It's here to make you more conscious. Because once you understand these patterns, you stop being shocked by every shift in energy. You stop dismissing your intuition so quickly. You stop assuming closeness equals loyalty. You stop confusing access with sincerity. And you stop handing your trust to people just because they know how to sound supportive. That's the real lesson. Not everybody who is close to you is at peace with you. Some people are close to you while wrestling with themselves. And if they are insecure enough, unresolved enough, unconscious enough, they may eventually act from that inner war. That doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means you start observing more carefully. It means you trust warmth that is consistent, support that doesn't curdle when you grow, curiosity that feels clean, closeness that doesn't become strange when your life expands. And maybe most importantly, it means this. When something in you notices that a person's energy has changed, don't rush to call yourself dramatic. Sometimes your nervous system notices betrayal long before your mind is ready to name it. That matters. So let me leave you with the question again. What was the first sign someone was about to betray you, but you only understood it later? That is the conversation I'd really love to see in the comments. And if this spoke to you, comment. Energy shifts before betrayal. That one line says a lot.